Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am going to try making some acrylic paint stickers today for going inside resin. So I have a silicone mat here that's got a sort of matte surface, and I'm going to paint my designs directly onto this with acrylic paint. I'm going to make them as thick as possible, and then I'm going to peel them off and put them in resin. So we're going to make a little picture together. We're going to make a toadstool woodland themed bunch of stuff that I can pick and choose to put into a 3D scene. I'm going for quite a cartoony style. So one thing I've learned about cartoony style, if you want a black outline, is to do your entire shape with black first. And this mat is really good for painting on because the acrylic paint doesn't all drag together like it would on a shiny silicone mat. You can do this on the back of a mold. You can do it on, if you've got acetate sheets, I think you can also peel acrylic off acetate sheets. Okay, this is the first layer. I'm going to do 2 layers to make it as opaque as possible, and then once I've done 2 layers, then you start doing the colour. So once again, straight back to the black, and then you try to keep it kind of smoothish. It doesn't need to be perfectly smooth because once this is in resin, you're not going to see any ridges, but it just makes it easier for painting the next details if it's smooth. It's good to have it on something that you can rotate and move around, like a little silicone mat or a mold. Now you should try and keep your edges as neat as possible, because your edges are going to be the edges of the stickers, and also have a little tiny bit of thickness to your edges, because when you come to peeling it up, it'll make it a whole lot easier and less likely to damage them if your edges are a bit thicker. I'm going to paint these all black. I'm going to let them dry, and then I'll come back when I'm start with the colour. Okay, so this has now dried. You want to make sure every single layer you do is really dry. You do not want to start a new layer until the one before it is bone dry, because if you build up lots of acrylic paint, when you come to peel it off and the underneath are still damp, it'll have been trapped in there, the moisture, and it will be a whole mess. It'll ruin your entire piece. So I'm going to use a little paint palette, and I'm going to start painting. Now the reason we did a full black background, if you want a black outline, is because it's so much easier to paint up to your black outline. If you don't want a black outline, just start straight on with your colour when you're making your stickers. But I find this so much easier to determine how big an outline I want. And this is going to take a few layers of paint. Not just to cover the black, but because you want these quite thick to be able to peel them off. Now you want to do this for every colour. You want to fill them in, and I'll come back and show you once I've done that. Okay, I've done the first lot of colour. As you can see, you paint up to your black edge. I'm going to leave that completely to dry, and I'm just going to keep on building up my colours until it's completely opaque. And then when I'm coming to do the final layer, which I'll add like a little shading and stuff, I'll come back when I'm ready to do that layer. Okay, once all your colours are opaque like this, you leave them to dry, and then you can go on to a layer of shading. If you want to add shading, of course, you maybe don't. You're going to pick the side which is going to have your light shining on it, and you're going to make that the same side for every one you do, if they're going in the same piece. And now I'm just going to work on a light side, a dark side, some little highlights on everything. Let it all completely dry overnight, and then we'll go to the fun part, which is peeling them off of this and putting them in resin. Okay, as you can see, now our stickers are nice and dry. I'm going to show you, you just need something with an edge, a flat edge, and very carefully you're going to bend your silicone and just tease up, it will come up really easily. And you just want to do it really slowly so you don't stretch it, and it will come up so easily. And then you can put them in resin. And I've actually got one that I did a big one with, and it looks like it's been painted in. So we're going to put these in resin and make a little scene. We're going to take our first bead and we are going to measure how much we need. So because I'm using a see-through mold, I can just cut it to size. It gives me a good idea. There we go. Basically, you can make a little crease where you want to cut it. And these are so easy to cut. Just be careful because they can be a little bit delicate. Just where you made that line, cut. So I'm just doing a very thin first layer. So I'm going to squish around. And this works in the same way that our paper bird worked, that we build up layers. It works in the exact same way. So we take our first one and we're just going to lay it in there. And then we're going to use our stick to push it down all the way to the base. My resin's a little bit on the thicker side, so you have to just work at it first to get it under before you get it in place, because it will naturally want to push the acrylic up because it's light. And then you get it in place where you trimmed it for. And because this is my first layer, I'm going to put my little cloud in. I think my big cloud might be too big, but my little cloud should be perfect. And this is why we do layers. We do different sizes and different stickers that can be used in different projects. So you could do like a whole map of acrylic pictures and then use them in several projects. And this is so much easier than painting in the mold. The smallest one in, right at the back. And they get bigger as they come forward. And that will be my first layer. So I'm just going to pop my bubbles and let that gel up. Now if you're impatient like me, you can actually float your next layers on top. You can float it on the next layer. Just be very careful, don't push it down any. And then you can go to your next toadstool too. And then I'm going to let that resin all over the edge of it. And this just takes patience. And then my last bit of grass will go down here with my bigger toadstool at the front probably. I don't know if I should cut a piece of this cloud off and also layer it. And I guess it is like working with paper. You can move them, mold them, trim them. I'm going to let that gel up. Okay, so I already put in a clear layer and I've left that sitting for quite a while. It's not as gelled up as I want it to be, but I am the most impatient person and it's gelled up enough. So first thing I'm going to do is apply my little grass layer to see where I want that. It pushing that grass down any further. I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do as the last toadstool. I might take the small one. Okay, so I've demolded it and it's got sand and dust. Now, don't be me. I overused my lighter when I was popping buzzle. Something I know better, something I know that happens. And what happens when you overheat silicone and resin is it fuses it together. So I had to rip out the mold and sand all my edges. Now later on I can just take a thin layer of resin around that, but for now I'm not even worrying about it. Just take note, you should never overheat your resin while in silicone. Now I realised in the videos I've been doing recently I haven't showed you how I degas thick resin like this. Once it's mixed up in the cup, I literally continue to keep stirring and apply some gentle heat with a heat gun from a distance so it warms it through as I mix it. And as soon as I start seeing it get liquidy and thinner and the bubbles start disappearing, I take the heat away. It shortens the working time, but it makes a massive difference. I'll show you. I've not got the heat close, like this is my heat gun, it's like out of range because it's not close. And I just heat it as I stir. And you'll start feeling your resin getting thinner. It won't push the cup around as much. It can take a little time if you're keeping your heat gun well enough away. And then once you think you have it thin enough, like it's a lot thinner than it was, you just give it another mix. Check on it. If it's still really bubbly, just do it again. That's all I do until it's nice and thin and clear. I let it cool down a little bit if I'm going to be doming, and it re-thickens up without any bubbles. Okay, so our front is very glassy and domed. I'm leaving the sides for now, I can deal with them later. Now to do the back. Now, because I've got this little divot in mine, it's probably going to show, but I'm just going to ignore it anyway, I don't mind. I could fill it in with UV resin, but to be honest, I cannot be bothered. So I'm going to be using acrylic paint on the back before my last layer. Green, I'm just going straight in with this colour. I'm just going to stop it just below my grass line on the front. You want your back to be as nice as your front. So this is going to take a couple of layers. And to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to just splodge it on, and then splodge on some darker. So that you get like a slightly dimensional effect. It's going to take a couple of coats. Now one thing I've learned with resin is that it adheres fine to acrylic paint, but acrylic paint can actually peel off of resin. So if you're doing a complete back of acrylic paint, you're going to stop the resin adhering to the front of your piece properly. So once I've done with this, I like to just sand a very sliver of an edge off the back of my paint just to get a good adhesion to my resin. You just basically want to make it as opaque as possible from the front. Doesn't matter about how neat it is on the back, how much ridges there are, because your resin makes it disappear. And this should just make this opaque. See, it's no longer see-through. It's a very cartoony sky. So I'm going to let that dry. Okay, when sanding a little ridge, it's not that hard. You just literally just take the very edge off. Now it usually makes it quite neat. If you make a mess like this, you can always go and touch it up. You just want to expose a little rim of resin all the way around, gently. and it is not hard to do. For some reason my blue paint seems to be a little bit crumbly. I wonder if it's because it's got gesso in it. The gesso is probably the reason it's crumbling a little bit. Normally acrylic paint sands very smooth like the green and leaves a perfect ridge. And you just want to take the excess away. Okay, so while that is drying, I'm going to mix up my resin. But I want to show you this one that I completely finished. This was the big sticker I did in resin. I did the back on this already. I've managed to get paint on it. Safety pin. And I believe it is looking very good. I'm really liking these safety pin backs. They're so much easier to install than other brooch back pins. I'm going to mix up my resin. I've mixed up a blue, and the same as usual, I am literally just going to put a thin coat first all the way to the edges, and then spread my other resin in the middle. Just making sure I get it all the way to those edges. Then I've got no problem with my resin coming apart because of that acrylic paint layer. Just got a little tiny bit more just to be sure there's enough. You'll know you've got enough resin when it stops pulling away from the edges. I appear to have all the edges, and I'm going to let that cure, and then it will be finished, and we will have two really cutesy cartoon style toadstool resin pieces. Okay, so it is the next day and this is how it's looking. Very 3D, very cute, as you can see. I like the style. It kind of reminds me of Super Mario Brothers, but this is our acrylic paint stickers in resin, using them in the 3D effect. If you like this video, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe so that it encourages me to think up more techniques in resin and post more craft content. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.